The other reason you're all doing a survey paper, which I forgot to mention earlier, but I will now come back to that, which is the oral comprehensive exams and thesis proposal. This is not, for those on the internet, general stuff for good computer science research. This is very particular to the PhD programs here at UCCS. But you're all in our PhD program, or might be, so let's go through that. Come on. Okay, so the oral exam is part of your PhD program. This is literally from our website. It is an oral presentation with a written report that surveys the literature in the planned area of research the student may pursue. A few example papers, it's generally at least 10, so that's our minimum, is you have to have at least 10 papers. Recommended by the program committee. So the one difference is you have to convince your program committee that you're going to do that right now. If it's your advisor and you say, I want to do it on this, chances are your advisor will say, yes, that's good, you can go do it on that. Every now and then they'll say no, but I haven't seen it too often. If you're one of the few students who don't have a PhD, everyone here have an advisor? So I think everyone online has an advisor. So it's now hard to not have an advisor because we make you have one when you get here. The only people who don't are those whose advisor left after they got here, and then they're stuck. So basically, this is right. You determine it with your advisor. The committee is 3 people. You have at least 10 papers. But the survey paper you do in here can easily be the 10 papers you're going to do for your oral exam. And you can make it into a paper you can then do something else with besides just thinking, oh, that's an assignment for this class. So if you are a funded student, this should be done by the end of your first year in the program. If you are an unfunded student, you have at the end of your second year. So you still have some time, but and you basically get one chance at this exam. You either pass or don't. And if you don't stay in the program.
Is the committee 5 people for PhD candidates versus 3 for
so
thesis?
Your thesis committee for your PhD is 5. Okay. At least one of whom has to be outside the department.
Right.
For the oral exam, it's just 3.
Okay.
And they can be, we don't say anything other than your advisor, whoever else you bring in is
one of the people you find in the hallway.
Well, no, so they have to be members of the graduate school of UCCS, so they have to go through the same process as a committee member would be. So you come up with that, you work through it. So, but it has a written element. So we call it the oral exam because to us the most important part is that we're going to grill you on these papers as well. So it's not like you get to write it and turn it in and you're graded on that. You have to stand up and answer questions, right? And that's the more interesting part of it. There is a way to get out of it. If you have published a paper after joining UCCS, where you've published in a good enough venue with a less than 40% selective validity rating, then you can get out of this oral exam. Just like you could have gotten out of this class if you had one of those. It takes 2 to get out of both, but 1 for each. But though I don't know if any of you get a waiver, so you can say you're not going to get out of it. If you write that survey paper and it gets published in good enough venue, then you don't have to do the oral exam. But it's really, after you've written the paper, doing the exam is not a big deal. I'm just going to mention this, right, just so we're all aware about the overall qualifiers. So we have this other set of qualifiers, which are the written qualifiers, which is why we have the other called oral. The written qualifiers for computer science are the 4 areas of architecture, operating system, automata, and algorithms. And for security, it's communications, fundamental networks, and computer security, applied cryptography, and homeland security. The exam for this takes place twice a year. You can sit down, pass the exam, and you don't have to take any classes, or the student can take the written exam up to 2 times. Student having any sponsorship, finish the exam and or courses by the end of your 2nd year. Other students have to finish it by the end of your 3rd year. There is a course waiver option for this. For CS, it's CS 5200, 5500, 5700, and 5720. You take all 4 of those with a GPA of 3.75 or above. Or you pass all of those with a GPA of 3.75 or above, which is basically A's in all and a B minus in 1. Then, sorry, not a B minus, B plus in 1. That's 3.75. Right? So all A's are A's and 1 B minus. Then you're out of the exam. If you get 1 solid B, get an overall GPA less than 3.75, you have to take the written exam for all 4 areas. Even if you got 3 A's, you're taking all 4 areas on the exam. Courses can't be retaken. Whether or not we'll transfer a course from someplace else depends on where it's from, and you have to apply to get it to count. For security, it's similar. There's just CS 5220, 5910, 5920, and 5950, right? So three different courses to go in that. Same GPA requirement, same thing. You only get one shot.
Is it like a weighted scale?
Weighted scale.
Yeah, so 4 classes, 1B.
No, not now B. B plus, which is 3 points. What's a B plus? So an A is 4.
I thought it was a B and 3 A's.
Yeah, that was a B and 3
B and
A's.
3 A's.
3.75.
Because I transferred in a B, which means that all the classes I'm
So
taking would.
4, 4, 4, and 3.
4, 4, 4, 3,
12,
15,
11.
divided by 3.
Yep.
3
3 A's and 1
4
B.
A minuses.
4, yeah, so there's more income. So it's not. I was just wrong when I said.
Somebody's been thinking about this.
Well, I just want to. It's important for me.
Yeah, so 3.75. So if you get 1 B minus, that's it, right? Because if you get a B minus, there's no way to make it work, right?
Right.
So you get 1 B minus, you're done. You get 2 Bs, you're done. Right, so then you're taking the written exam.
I heard only one has passed it.
Hmm?
I heard only one person in history has passed it.
The written exam?
Yeah.
No, we've got like 8 people have passed the written exam.
I'm sure that.
Oh, 8 people.
Very few people take it. Most people go for the course option.
Right.
In fact, as far as I know, only one person has not passed the written exam when they sit down and take it on 2 or 3 tries. Depends on what happened. We say only 2. We've actually given one person a 3rd chance at one section. But it's a question, this discussion between you and your advisor. I actually strongly encourage my students to sit down and take the exam because it's much less work than 4 courses. But that's, most of my students don't listen to me either, so. Okay, so the next thing in our PhD program is the thesis proposal comprehensive exam. So this is basically your thesis proposal. Here's the area I'm going to do my research in. You have to show that you have a significant grasp of the fundamentals of your research area to be able to be successful, convince the ability to conduct innovative research, and the ability to exchange ideas with the committee and members of the advisory committee. Faculty in our department, faculty in most departments really come in 2 different categories with a pretty good spectrum in between. There are some people that like to see very early thesis proposals. You have a rough idea and maybe one result and you're going down this path and they want you to get out and get those ideas validated with a bunch of other people. And then there are people that like to wait until you actually have results and they're much later and you've already gotten a paper or 2 published and now you're ready to go for your thesis proposal. Schools all over the place have that wide range of spectrum of faculty because it depends on where they're at, right, and how they feel about their research and they approach it their own way, right, depending where they came from. So your advisor will maybe anywhere from this definition allows it to be very early. Right? My students, I want them to have 2 or 3 published papers before they do the proposal because I want them to go through the process and really understand what's going on, and then we're putting together the story. So the expected timeline, and this is the other reason people will sometimes do it with less results, is you're expected to be done by the end of your 3rd year. The maximum time for your PhD in the UCCS program is 6 years. After that, you have to get exceptions from the graduate school, and actually it can go up to 9, but they start making your courses disappear. So you have to keep up to date. And in a field that turns over fast enough, 6 years is actually, some of the stuff is a little bit out of date. We'll see what it is. Other thing to know, PhD students can't enroll in more than 24 hours of dissertation prior to passing the comprehensive exam. Hopefully you will never get anywhere near this limit, but it comes up every now and then. So your advisor can't delay too long, right? You can't have more than 24 of your 30 required credits before you do your thesis proposal. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. It's all, again, straight on the website. The grad school has a secondary rule, which is you must complete 15 credits after you finish your dissertation. This has actually been a little bit more problematic in the last couple of years because students think, well, I can get up to 24, right, and then do my thesis proposal. You can, but if you do 24 and 15, you're doing more than 30. Right? But we got the rule changed to allow the 24 because students sometimes start down a path, doesn't work, and now you have to restart down a new path and it takes more time, but you've already gathered some dissertation credits. And especially if you're an international student who has to maintain full-time status, what are you going to do? So you can take more than 30 dissertation credits. The minimum is 30. Maximum is, whatever it is, 39, 49, right? 24 and 15, right?
I don't think that's anymore. There's not summation involved.
Yes. So your dissertation is, you got to get at least 4 out of 5. You really don't want to be in the association where anyone votes no. It's never good. In fact, I've rarely seen 4 out of 5. I've seen no's, which become the majority, and 5s. Right? There are very few 4 out of 5 passes. Although it's happened. So what's in your proposal? So your proposal is the thesis proposal document is like a little bit like a paper. So you'll have a title, abstract, introduction, background research, right? An overall research theme. This is sort of like an overall introduction to the area you're working in, and then what I would call research questions 1, 2, and 3. Some other faculty members will call them contributions 1, 2, and 3, right? To me, when you write the proposal, some might be contributions because you already done them, and others are questions because you haven't done them. But they're all questions and possible answers. For each research question, and there's 2 structures, you can put all the background research in the background, and if you do one problem and 2 or 3 elements, that way it makes sense. Otherwise, for each research question, you might have different related work, the implications, the preliminary work, and the plan of research, possible methodologies, plan for results validation and anticipated timeline. So if you have results from a paper, this makes it a little bit easier because basically each chapter can be almost self-contained, where you have your own research and significance of this paper, then the next paper, and you put them together. But you don't have to do it that way. You can do a more integrated research. We try and make the balance. One thing that does show up in the proposal that wouldn't necessarily show up in a paper, but if you're doing a real proposal and you have not done the work, then you have to talk about what am I going to do and how am I going to evaluate it, even if I don't know how it works or what it's done. So when we talk about you doing a research paper in this class, that's actually what we're going to ask you to do, something like a chapter that would be one of your research questions where you say, well, here's the background research, here's the idea, here's how I think it might work, but I don't know for sure. Here's how I'll evaluate it, which I already know how I'm going to evaluate, right? I don't know what the answer to the evaluation is, but here is the process by which I will evaluate that work. And then a little bit about, your timeline to show a proposal. We don't have to worry about the timeline in this paper. But it's really, when I talked last week about how you write a paper, I actually said you write the paper first, then you do the research. So you can all write that paper even if you haven't done the research, because it's the plan for how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to evaluate it, what data I'm going to use, right? Then by the time you do the research, it might be very different. Maybe not either. Any questions on this? Again, you're not writing a thesis proposal, but part of what I wanted to do today was sort of motivate why everyone's doing both a survey paper and a bit of a research paper. Even if you don't have results, you're doing it for your proposal. Even if you have research results and you're working on a course or research paper, think of your survey paper as your oral exam draft paper. It's still not wasted work. Typical process. So for your thesis, right, this is something you work out with your advisor, but you're going to start out with some general idea, do your literature review to narrow down and sharpen your problem definition, which is hopefully something you've all been doing as you've been going through this research part, is figuring out what's done, what's open, where's the gap that I can fill stuff in. For a PhD thesis, you usually need multiple related problems under one broad theme. So you want to find multiple related problems, not something, look, I can solve this one piece and then I'm done. Right? That doesn't actually help build a full thesis. There's nothing wrong with that from a paper publishing point of view. I've had a PhD student who graduated with 12 papers, 17 papers, I don't remember what he did, but a whole bunch were just little one-off pieces that weren't connected in any way. His thesis was really 4 of his other papers. He was just trying, maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll try that, bouncing around doing different things. And that's perfectly fine, but you want to find an area for your thesis that's got pieces. But don't worry if you can't see all the pieces together. For now, you're fine. Write the problem statement, justify the potential innovations. Think about how you're going to do your design. Be either experimental design or theoretical. We will actually have lectures later in the semester on what is experimental design, what does that mean, how do you come up with some. A plan for evaluation, for validation and evaluation, and then a timeline for your thesis proposal. In my view, having published papers adds significant credibility to your claims about your ability to do this. I like to recommend to my students we start with 1 or 2 problems that are often, there might be 1 or 2 big ones we go after, but there might be some smaller pieces. This way, when they go in, they have a lot of credibility, even when they're pretty vague about how the last chapter is going to work, the last contribution is, right? You've already shown I can do it twice. Now I'm going to go do it 1 more time. I'll do it 1 or 2 more times, see where it goes. But the other reason, from my point of view, that I push my students to do it early is because I want to know what they can accomplish. Because I want to push them to do the biggest, most audacious things they can, but I don't want a thesis proposal that's big and audacious if they can't accomplish big and audacious. I got to narrow it down. because the thesis proposal is a little bit like a contract. It's not a formal contract, but it pretty much says if the student does what they put in here, we're going to pass them. It's a very bad place to not do what you said in your proposal. Right? So if I want you to do something big and audacious, I want you to do it before you do your proposal, so that you can then have that in there and we know it works, right? As opposed to, yeah, you tried that and it doesn't. And since, I don't know, half the ideas we come up with in my lab at least, maybe more, like 60% of them, 70% of them don't work, it's very risky to write a thesis proposal that says, here's 3 big ideas. And then have, if it's only 60%, right, 2 of the 3 not work, and then redo your thesis. We don't want to go down that path. So what problem to explore? Well, that's the time to talk to your advisor. This class does not tell you what research problems you're going to study. That's between you and your advisor. And along the way, and hopefully you've all been talking with your advisor throughout this class about how things are going. If you don't talk to your advisor, you're not going to have a good time. Things will generally go bad. So talk to them about what you're doing for research. Very few advisors love to be surprised by, look, I went off in this completely different direction. Now, if it went off in this completely different direction and have a solid result, they might still be okay with it. But they're better if you take them along for the ride. At least make them think they're part of your decision process. So timeline, right? Work with your advisor, check important dates for submitting. Lots of students get messed up because they forget how long things will take. Things like IRB can take a long time to get through your process. And obviously, if you have to go collect some data someplace, design and testing experiments, a lot of these things add time to your process that you have to back up and figure out what they're going to be. The timeline is not always respected when you write your proposal, but it does actually help to have done one. And I like to recommend doing a Gantt chart because I like Gantt charts. They help you understand visually what the schedule is. What depends on what is an important thing. To me, it shows that the students thought about it. So my personal advice approach, which means you can completely ignore it because I am not any of your advisors, in year 1, if you can, go big. Try for a tier 1, the absolute best conferences in level of problems and papers, right? But either way, my recommendation is you should be trying to publish something this year. I would like it if half this class produces a publishable paper by the end of this class, right? That would be great. But in year 1, if you're not successful, no big deal. Year 2, you're now 2/3 of the way through a 3-year PhD program. If you're doing it in 3 years, quarter. If you're approaching halfway, right? So in year 2, you've now got a balance, right? Reassess and take the papers that didn't get into the tier 1 in year 1, revise them, resubmit them, going for tier 2 and 3, or maybe trying again for tier 1 if you were close. Maybe generate a new idea for tier 1. So I try and get my students in their first year to submit at least 1, maybe 2 papers. In their second year, it's 2 to 4 papers. And in their third year, right, year 3, you're doing your proposal and getting ready to graduate. And after that year, I'm hoping you're going to publish 1 or 2 papers, which means submitting 4 or 5 if you're getting 50% hit rates. So, and some of those are resubmitted, which gives you a chance to get them done.